brought to you by Best Movie Ratings. Best Movie Ratings is a one-stop, easy and elegant movie ratings experience. Stop wasting your time on bad movies and download the world's best movie ratings app from the iTunes App Store now.
Hi everyone, this is Ahmed Kremli and welcome to Be Efficient TV. The mission of this web TV show is to boost the efficiency of your business and life through tips and tricks from leading experts. And today I have with me Deborah Robinson. She is an award-winning journalist and she's an author and television personality. Welcome to the show, Deborah.
Thank you so very much for having me. Great to be here.
My pleasure. How did you start your career in the media?
Well, I started by actually going to college for psychology, and then I switched to communications, and then I switched to journalism, and that's where I fell in love. And coming out of college with a degree in broadcast journalism, I got my first job in radio as a news director, as a radio station doing the morning news. And after that, I decided to go back to college and get my master's degree in journalism. So I didn't finish that because I was literally working in the industry and didn't feel the need to complete it. But I left the radio station and went into management at a TV station there in Little Rock, and that's where it all really started to flourish.
All right, what is your focus currently in the media world?
Well, my focus currently is where it's always been for me, and I believe my job, my assignment, what I'm here on this earth to do is to seek, reveal, and communicate truth through the media. And so my assignment right now is surrounding all of the projects that come to me. I don't really seek them out. It seems like every time there's a story or something that happens and I'm supposed to work on it, research it, develop it, do a story on it, an interview or whatever, it just touches my heart, and that's what I usually go for. So it's always about bringing forth stories that I'm passionate about. Something's on the news and it makes me cry. I know that's what I'm supposed to do something about, to bring some sort of light to it, understanding, to bring it out more in the open. So my focus is on working on stories and issues that I believe can change the world, and they started by changing my life.
So you work for a channel or you do it by your own within your company? How do you do that?
I am independent, and that's always been important to me. I worked for a station for the first 6-7 years of my career, and I realized that if I wanted to continue to tell the stories that were important to me without having someone decide those stories for me, that I needed to be on my own. At that time, I was interviewing some major people who were pushing me to get out on my own because they knew the kind of stories that I wanted to tell, and it wouldn't be possible to tell those stories from the station's point of view because they weren't the mainstream stories that were important to them.
So you started working in radio and then TV, and then you quit working for the channels and you made your own company to create your own content.
That's right. I started my company, Robinson Omni Media and Studios, to create my own content because I knew that it was important. And once I started, you go through the things that businesses go through. It was amazing that when I left the station, I didn't realize that, I never really had to worry about who was paying the photographer and who was paying all of the bills. And then it came to the point of, wow, you're on your own. And now if you want to do this story, you have to consider, do you have the staff to put on it? Who's paying the photographer? Who's literally paying for the story? And so things changed. I started not only doing my own projects, but doing projects for others. And now I have come full circle, and now I am, thank God, doing my own stories again.
So you do like documentary stories, videos, interviews. What is your focus in terms of story? You do everything?
I do everything. It all depends upon what I'm working on or what I decide. For example, I'm doing a series in Little Rock. I'm from Little Rock, and I'm doing a series called Conversations with Arkansas Governors, where I'm interviewing all of the Arkansas governors. There are 6 of them within upcoming governor at 7, all separately at the Ron Robinson Theater there. And so that's a theater piece that we put together, and we'll be interviewing all the governors for that. And then on other projects, I'm doing a book project as well. So it all just depends upon what's going on and what I feel is the best way to handle that project. I'm doing research right now on 9/11 that will eventually become a documentary. So that is documentary work. I'm also doing research on juveniles spending life in prison without parole. That as well will become a documentary. But along the way, they will be pieces that I use on the internet to help bring the awareness to the story and to the issues.
I see like very nice setup in terms of live interviews, like all of these you pay it by your own. You don't have like a contract with a channel that pays for it and then you give them the content. Is that right?
No, I don't. I conceive, my company, we say we're from conception to distribution. We conceive the idea, and once we conceive the idea, we have to find a way to pay for it. So we either go after investors or we go after sponsors. However, we find a way to pay for that project. And then once we pay for it, we do it. And the whole focus is I'm still independent and I'm still deciding the projects that I work on, and that's really important for me.
What changed in this independency? Like what the independency gave you?
Freedom. One, it gave me freedom of my time, and that's very important. You know, the only things that you come here on this earth with and that you can really control is your time and your intellect. And those are the two things that really this independence gives me. It gives me control over my intellectual property. There's nothing in the world that you can own more than your intellectual property, the things that come out of you. So it has given me total control over that, meaning that when I study, whatever I put in, when it comes out, that's my property. That's the gift that God has given me to give to the world. And so as I give that, you know, to the world, whatever that content might be, I keep control of it, and nobody else controls how it goes out, when it goes out, if it goes out. And then, you know, my time is very important. Being able to go and spend now a month in Little Rock doing the Arkansas project, or to stay here in Las Vegas to actually work on my talk show on the Strip. It's all about freedom for me, and the freedom to do the stories that I want. I was never very fond of going to cover car crashes and doing stories that weren't important to me. I felt that I wanted to do something more important with my time, and independence has given me that.
Great, like good for you. Like very few journalists go this entrepreneurial road. I see all of them like working for big channels. And so how did you decide that, and how long you spent in the channels or radio before you made this quantum leap?
Well, I was with the radio station for less than a year. The day I graduated, I had interviewed a guy while I was with the radio station, the television station in college. I'd interviewed him, and he said, when you graduate, I've got a job for you. And literally the day I graduated, he was managing the finances at a radio station, and they hired me over at the radio station as news director. And I was there a short amount of time, and then I moved into television. At that time, I was like the youngest station manager at the TV station there, and I managed the station along with, I started producing, you know, television programs myself there. And probably 5 years in, I realized, because I was working on stories that I felt were very important, but they weren't that important to management. And so one story in particular that really started me to thinking that it is now time for me to, you know, do my own thing. If I don't, I won't be able to continue to tell the stories that I want to tell. And it just happened that everybody that I was interviewing, some of the people really made a big impact on my life. Tony Brown, I remember interviewing him. At that time, he had several shows on the public television. And I asked him, I said, how are you doing exactly what you want to do? You know, the stories that you want to do, you're producing your own content. How do you do it? And he said, because I own my own content. That's the key. I own my own stuff. I find everything from my own projects. And that started, you know, I started thinking this might be the way I want to go. And then I interviewed Louis Farrakhan. And at that interview, he asked me, he said, okay, here's what I want you to do. He said, turn the cameras off. And after we turned the cameras off, because it was a really in-depth interview, and we know that he is very, outspoken and has some, really things that are not mainstream that he talks about. He said, turn the cameras off. We turned the cameras off. And he said, now, do you really think they're going to let you air this interview? And I said, yes, because, I was with BET at the time as well. And I said, yes, because this is what they never stopped me from airing anything. And he said, if you really want to speak truth and to work on stories that are important and that can change lives, you're going to have to do it on your own. You're going to have to leave the station. So I kept hearing these major people in the media who had totally taken control over their message and over what they were doing. They kept speaking to me that it was time that I left and I was on my own. And it finally hit home when I was working on a story. I was working on a series on gangs there in Little Rock, and I happened to come across a story where two young men were killed at a liquor store. And it was late at night when we got the story, and I was actually working on the gang story, and I told my photographer that we needed the video of the sirens, of the police sirens, and to go back down there to the liquor store and get the video, because that's all I wanted. I didn't know what was going on. We just needed video. He went down and he came back and he said, Deborah, it's horrible down there. Two young boys have been killed, and it's horrible. I was working on a story on gangs, so I told him, now I need you to go back and I need you to shoot this time. I want to see death. I need these kids to see what death looks like. Shoot up close, shoot the blood, shoot, whatever is happening, I want you to shoot it. He went back and he shot this, and it was just amazing. And the next day I said to my boss, did you hear about what happened at the liquor store? We were there, we got this great footage. And he said, where's the footage? And I said, I have it. And he said, okay, I need you to lock it up. And I said, what do you mean lock it up? I said, I don't have a way to lock up footage. I had my own location. I was in a remote location. He said, well, buy a safe. It was that important. So I said, okay, now this is interesting that this footage would be so important. And it turns out that it was a major story because it happened to be an officer that did the killings, and it turned out to be major. But the mother contacted me because she knew that I had the footage. She asked me if she could use the footage because she was considering a lawsuit against the police department and all of that. And my boss told me they would have to subpoena us for it. There was no way that she was getting it. And she worked for the company. It was amazing to see the political, how political things were. And at that moment, I made the decision. I said, no, what I will do is the stories that are important, that story was important, whether it was a cop involved or not. What was important was that this woman's son was killed, and I had video that would prove that it was not a legal above-board killing, and I couldn't share it with her. And eventually, she subpoenaed, got the footage, went to court, and the city, along with the police department, ended up paying her a lot of money. But it all started because I had the footage and I was able to share that. I was able to tell her to put in her ear that something is wrong here. It didn't happen the way they said it happened. And through that, I was able to change lives, and I saw the power of what I was doing, and I realized that I didn't want the politics on what I knew to do. When I knew it was time to do something right, I wanted the ability to do it. So those things kind of led me, and it was almost like I didn't have a choice. I knew that I had to go. I knew that there were stories that were being brought to me that were more important, and I wanted to tell those stories.
You started bootstrapping these like this ventures, or like you have an investor when you just made the move?
I didn't have an investor in the beginning. I started with just my company, and I eventually raised some finances for the venture, but those were very, very short-lived finances, and eventually I had to figure it out. So the process was you find an investor, and that investor takes care of some overall foundation things, but every project that came along after that, I still had to raise the money for that project. And that meant I had to go back to the table to find an investor, or I had to be creative and financing it through sponsorships, product placement, and other things like that.
So project like, let's say if it's an interview show, is it a project that you find like in a particular, like specific investor for it? But if you are shooting certain news or things, like you have investors who get involved in your company, or you just bring them, let's say, invest for me for the stories that I'm gonna cover for 1 month or 2 months, how it works?
Well, it works both ways. If I don't have an overall investor, sometimes it's harder to find an overall investor than it is to find someone who might be interested in a project. For example, I might find someone who might be interested in 9/11 research, but they're not necessarily interested in funding my entire company. So that way I can bring them in to just to finance the 9/11 research, or just to finance the story on juveniles in prison. I might even find grant monies to do the juveniles spending life in prison without parole. So there are different ways I go about looking at it per project. But recently, I raised money for a project here in Las Vegas, and it was the reason why I moved to Las Vegas, and that was to start a talk show on the Strip, actually, and we raised the finances, we had the investors, we started the show, and then in the middle of our first season, the investors couldn't come up with the additional money that was needed, and so we had to go back to the table, put the show on hiatus, and go back to the table to try to raise the money. And at that time, it had taken us a year to find the investors, and we were talking $250,000 investors and up. So it had taken us quite a while to find those investment dollars. So what we decided to do is another friend came to me with an idea, another business opportunity. So what we did and what we're doing now is we're funding the talk show through this business opportunity. And not only that, we're showing and sharing with other companies how, and other journalists like myself, independent, who want to stay independent, how they can also fund their projects through the same way that we're doing ours.
In terms of statistics, like what's the percentage of independent journalists comparing with the people who's employed?
Wow, I'm not sure. I don't know if I can give you a number on that. It's really hard though to be out here independent, but it's getting easier because of how people are watching television and what's going on now. The internet has sort of like evened the playing field and given us an opportunity to do more and to share more. So we don't necessarily need the big television station, you know, behind us anymore. And for those of us who really take journalism seriously, and it's hard to work for a station that when you're not having an opportunity to do the stories that really make a difference. If you look at news, you look at your local news station, you don't find a lot of investigative reporting. You don't find a lot of stories that really make a difference. You find your car crashes, you find all of the things that really are not that important to journalists who are feels like it's their
so
purpose.
How much percentage you publish? How much? Sorry to cut you off. How much percentage you publish yourself and you sell to the other channels or like newspapers or?
I don't sell my content. Content is king right now. If you have content, that's a good thing because everybody is looking for great content. But what I don't do is I don't sell it because it's really all that, you know, it's my work. All that I have. What I'll do is, for example, I do a series on the ABC affiliate here where I do, you know, I might do a story and then I'll place it on, you know, on that affiliate, but I don't sell the content and that they have the copyright for it. I can repurpose it. I can do whatever I want to do with it. So everything that I do, I own. For example, the series in Little Rock with where we're interviewing all of the Arkansas governors. That series is a very, very good series. It's history making. For once, you're going to have every Arkansas governor, and there are only 6 of them living. You're going to have them in conversations, one after the other. And so we've already, AETN, which is the local public television affiliate there in Arkansas, they've already acquired the rights, the international rights, the local rights, the rights for education, because they know that the series is going to be is going to be important, and they want to be able to put it out. So they've already acquired the rights pending us delivering the shows. So that was an easy sell. I simply made a call to the public television station there, told them what we were doing with the series, and immediately she said, "We want it. We want the series. What do we need?" Well, I wanted to make sure, one, that I did not give them exclusivity, because giving them exclusivity would totally mean that I couldn't air it on another station, that I couldn't put it online, and that I basically have given up my content. So they have non-exclusivity, but they are going and distributing it through all of the public television stations, to all of the schools that they have access to for teaching. So it's really cool. You find a station that realizes that you've got great content. But the key is, anybody could have done this, but my company, we conceived it. I thought, Arkansas is where I'm from. When's the last time we heard from Governor David Pryor, from Jim Guy Tucker, from Huckabee? We've got some major Arkansas governors. You've got Bill Clinton, and then you've got Mike Huckabee, who's going to be running for president again, and having interviews with them reflecting on what it was like in their life now as an Arkansas governor. That's great. So we conceived the project. The first sponsor we went after was the spot who owns the theater, and that's the Central Arkansas Library System. They said, absolutely, we'll sponsor. So they were our anchor sponsor, which allows us to move forward with the program. And then we seek additional sponsors after that. But that starts next month. So that's the process of how it goes. I basically conceive a project, and then I find who might be interested in this project, and then we see if they could provide the finances to make it happen.
So you create the idea of the show, you contact a channel before you start the show, or you start the show and then you start pitching them?
It depends. I did this before because having a station connected with the show before we started seeking sponsors helped. Because when you can tell a sponsor that we already have a station and you're going to get additional exposure by coming involved.
You have somebody back you up. Backing you up.
I'm sorry, what was that?
You have somebody backing you up, so the investors will be more interested to finance.
That helps to get sponsors.
Just I want to ask about like how it works when you make the deal with the channels. Like, is it when always you keep the rights for yourself and you can sell it to other channels, or sometimes they want to have exclusivity in terms of the deal?
Either way, it just depends upon how you negotiate. Of course, they probably wanted exclusivity, but I believe that I'm creating history, so why would I just give it away unless they were paying really big money? That's another thing. So if they were paying right, if the cost was right, I'm sure I would consider giving them exclusivity. But they know it's history, and they're not paying for exclusivity. They're paying for what they can do with it. And it all depends upon what the station wants. If you're trying to sell something to now when I go to the local, because I'm now in negotiations with the local affiliates, the local ABC, NBC, CBS affiliates, to air it and to possibly do it live. Well, that's another thing. They, of course, want some exclusivity in that I won't necessarily air it on their competitor. I'm not going to give them the rights ABC and then turn around next week and put it on CBS. And CBS wouldn't want it either because I've already aired it in the market and they couldn't make any money on it. So it all depends. So it would be, okay, now I've got a station and it's exclusive to that area. So the area could have exclusivity, or if you're thinking about a national, like a cable network or something, they would definitely want exclusivity on a project like this.
And they pay flat fee, or how they pay? How they pay per views, or how it works?
No, they pay flat fees and not per views, especially not a public television station. What they do is you negotiate how much you want, and it's per show. So we're delivering to them 7 shows, and this is they pay a certain amount for every show, and we just want to make sure that when it's all over, we've paid for production, we've paid for all of the costs, and we make some money on it as well.
Is there like certain average for the prices? Let's say for a story of 5 minutes or a show of 1 hour. Can you give us like an idea about the prices, or it depends how popular is it? But in general, if it's a new show or a new story or a new
Yeah, it depends. I remember when I was working for BET, I was an independent correspondent for BET, and that was some years ago. But I would deliver a minute and a half, 2 minutes, because I was independent as well. So they would say, we want a story. I was covering the Clinton election, his run for president. So they were like, okay, we need a story on this. I would do the story. We'd edit it in Little Rock, and then we'd send it there. And, and so the price would vary. I would, make maybe $1,500, $2,500 on a minute and a half piece, that I sent out. And then they would also pay the photographer and pay the other fees. So it all depends. Now, if you're delivering to a major network an hour show, I mean, you're in the major dollars. You're in the hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're at that level. But, if you're on a statewide level, you're in the tens of thousands, possibly even down, even less than that. So it depends. If you're talking a local affiliate, the price per show is definitely less.
Is there a process to pitch the let's say the channels? Is there like certain proposal that you have to submit, or you just call somebody and you tell them that I have this new content are you interested to buy it? Or
you kind of want to know who's in charge, and the people that you would want to speak with. You want your program director if you're talking about local news or local programming, and that's the same way. You want who's in charge of putting the programs on, who's buying, and so if you find your program director, you're usually in the right place. And if you're trying to pitch a news story, you want to find your assignment editor. You want to find the news director. So those are the positions that you want to go after when you're looking to pitch a story to a news channel, which is different than pitching, an entire program. Because at the network level, they're buying, they'll buy your program and they'll buy a series of 13 at a time. So you're producing a series of 13 shows, and once you get to that level of producing shows, at that level, you're talking, way more money. But the interesting thing is, when I did my show for 5 years out of Nashville, one of the key things about doing that show was I was on a digital television station at that time. So the fees weren't as high. I didn't get as much for that show when I did it on the digital affiliate. But
so digital means they broadcast on the internet, or how?
Well, no, it's if you have cable, you can tell there's some stations on cable that are digital, and then there's some that are not. Now most of the stations are digital. You don't see that anymore. You used to see, wow, we're digital or we're not. And if you go through, sometimes you'll see a 13.1, 13.2, 13.3. Some of those it's a local regular, and then there's a local digital.
In plain English, what does that mean? What does that mean, 13.1 and digital, in plain English?
That means that they're broadcasting a digital signal, which is usually a higher resolution, a higher signal than your regular broadcasting might be doing locally. But now everybody is digital. It's really hard to find a station that is not. It's
like
digital,
so clear, like the Showtime. You mean like that?
Right. They're very clear, and the production is all done on digital cameras. Now everything is digital, so it's less of an issue now, but
so you said it's a digital channel, but they paid you still less. Why is that? It should be more.
Well, no, it was less because those stations also, when you're dealing with digital networks and you're dealing with cable networks, you have so many networks to where it's hard for them to find their footing. If you go through your through your cable channels, and they're channels that you never watch. Some of those channels are just barely on the air because they're not, they're having to. The only way that they're making money is by selling advertising, and it's hard to come by when you have a digital channel that nobody's watching. So what a lot of even the local stations are doing this, and I know because we started syndicating the Deborah interview show, and at that time, the only thing that we could get was a barter deal. And most, if you look at your syndicated talk shows during the day, most of them are under barter agreements. And your barter agreements simply say, you've got a 30-minute, you've got an hour show, and you have so many, you've got 13 minutes of advertising, say. You've got 13 minutes of advertising. What we'll do is we'll split this advertising with you. We'll give you 6 minutes and we keep 6 minutes and nobody pays any money. So we're not going to pay you for your show, but what we'll do is we'll give you 6 minutes of your advertising that you can sell. So you go find your sponsor, you put that advertising in those shows, and then we will find our sponsors and we'll put the advertising in and we can both make money, because on a local level, it's really hard for them to pay for programming like they used to. And all of the syndicated talk shows are on, mainly barter agreements, whether it's a 80-20, 60-40, they're on some sort of barter agreement where they are exchanging advertising rather than dollars.
So you still also try to get sponsors to, sometimes if you have such a deal that you have 50% of the time to sell advertisement.
Right. And so a company like that's when you would get a distributor like a King World. Just consider that King World distributed the Oprah Winfrey Show, for all of those years. King World, actually, Oprah's show was bought. The networks bought her show. They bought it because they knew that it delivered the ratings, and that was key. So she was not on a barter system. But shows like, and then when she ushered in the Dr. Phil show, he was also not on a barter system. The stations paid for those shows. But shows like Montel and, you got some of the other shows that came in later were on barter systems, to where, it was an 80-20 barter or whatever, and the dollars didn't exchange hands. So the company usually the 80 is for the channel or for the content owner. It's usually for the channel. It's usually for the channel, because so usually you, and it depends on how you negotiate. If you know that you've placed the show in different places and it has good ratings, and you know that you're delivering an audience, you can negotiate better. So that's key. And
you, as let's say a content creator, you prefer to take a share from the advertisement, or it's a headache?
I would prefer, it depends on how you're set up, because distribution companies like a King World, they have a lot of things in place where it's easy for them to find an advertiser, because that advertiser then goes in that local station and they put them in all of the different shows. For me, it's a little bit harder, so I would prefer that they took care of advertising and and just paid the cost and bought the program straight out, rather than having me to go out and find advertising. But in Nashville, I basically did that. There's another way that you go if you don't have your show bought by the station itself, by the program director. You can always go through the buying time. You can actually buy time, and if you buy time, then you control all of your advertising. You literally just pay the station, and then you make all of the money from your advertising.
So how you do that?
Oh, that's pretty easy, because every station has you call the advertising department of every station. You want to tell them you want to buy paid programming. It's long formatted programs. They are from 30 minutes to an hour. So you call up your local station and you say, can I have your avails? If you don't, you can get an agency to do it. We do it as well. So you ask for the avails, and that is what's available, the time slots that are available. And most times it's late night, overnight, a Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and they have prices on those.
So you don't buy the time within your show that you are giving them. You buy different times. And
you buy the block of time. You buy the 30 minutes after the game.
Okay.
You buy that kind of time. So for example, if they have 30 minutes that comes on a Saturday afternoon, they had a show on a matinee show, and after the matinee, there's 30 minutes that they can sell. So they may sell that 30-minute show, depending on the station, anywhere from $350 to $1,500. They sell that 30-minute show to content producers like us, who go in and say, okay, and a lot of times what you see is infomercials. So when you see infomercials in those slots, you know that those are paid programming slots that that infomercial spot. But every now and then you'll find companies who are real content producers who are buying that time as well to put on legitimate projects and not just infomercials.
So let's say you bought this slot of 30 minutes, then how you sell it?
You then go find the advertisers, and one of the things that you do is I always look for people who are interested in the content. So what is the show about? You go after people who would be interested in reaching the people who are watching the show. So on a local level, you start, contacting and getting to your local people, reaching your local people who are already advertising. Look for people who are already advertising, because at that point, you know that they understand advertising, they have a budget for it. And you just need to convince them that you can deliver to them the audience that they're looking for. If they're looking for women between 18 to 25, you want to tell them that my talk show is about women. It's for women. We deal with the issues from 18 to 25. And this show in particular has, we're dealing with this. And you share that with the sponsor so they know that they can deliver, you can deliver the audience, and then they'll pay for that audience. That's how you get the sponsor.
Is there like any international companies or agencies that specialize in that you can share the name with us?
No, I don't know I don't know anybody who specializes in particular. Most of your, you'll find that most of your infomercials, they definitely, there are companies that do infomercials, and they go around the country buying up time like this. But you would just have to, you would have to just find an ad agency will do it. Any ad agency in any city knows how to buy avails of paid programming. So any ad agency will be able to do it for you or help you.
How many people you have in your company? How many full time? How many you outsource?
We outsource most everybody. I have an assistant. We have management company. There are 3 of us that are owners in the company. I have 2 attorneys who own the company with me, and so there are 3 of us as owners. And then I have an assistant, and I have an assistant in Little Rock and one in Las Vegas. And everybody else we bring on for the project. So when we go into Little Rock, my assistant in Little Rock is now hiring people for that project only. They work for that project. They're 1099. We use them for that project only so that we don't have to have the overhead of keeping people on board when we don't have a project for them to work.
So you are legally backed up with 2 attorneys?
Yes, and they're foreign. One's from Persia, one's from Germany.
Okay, and they are familiar with the US, like your state law?
Yes, they are. Yes.
Okay, so you are like into selling advertisement, buying advertisement, creating content. How do you do that only with 1 assistant and you just outsource? How do you organize your time? How do you do that?
Until I have a project, it doesn't matter that I have the people. So once I get a project and the project is greenlit with finances, now it's time for me to bring the people into it. So until we put our sponsors in place, our foundation sponsors for the Arkansas series, there's no reason to have staff, waiting and working on that. And because my work is very personal, I'm only working on the projects that really mean something to me. We're not a company, and actually we're not even looking for clients. We're not trying to find clients to do their work. It's just our project work. So we're in the process of raising money and finding money. Once we find the money for that project, we then hire on the people that we need to make it happen.
Do you sell other people content as well? If they will come to you and they will ask you to sell the content to a channel or to a newspaper, you do that?
It would depend upon, what they want from me. If they commissioned it and they asked me to go out and get it, yeah, I go out and get it and deliver it to them and it's theirs. But if it's something that I came up with, my original idea, I went out and got the content. If I want a station or someone to pick that up, I try to keep the copyright to it so that I can repurpose it and do something else with it as well.
Share with us some techniques that you use when you research an interviewee.
Well, the first thing I do is I try to get their EPK, their electronic press kit. Get that in your hands, and that way you can have the basis, the foundation for who the person is. Once I have that, I just do a simple Google search and start to find out information about them. And that leads me in different directions to who they are, what they're doing, who they're connected to, and that kind of lays the foundation. I try to make sure that I read everything I can about them. One thing about what I do when I do interviews is I try to know the answer to every question before I ask the question, because if I know the answer, I know where everything is going, and that allows me to listen even more intently as well. That allows me to let them lead me into directions into the next question, because I'm not having to, sit in the interview and take up everything. I already know some things, and I'm leading them to where I want the conversation to go.
How long?
So I start with the research.
How long usually the research process takes?
It could take, anywhere from a couple of days. I've had to do research projects with a couple of days' notice. Now, I'm working and doing the research for the 6 governors that are coming up next month. And so I've already started that process. I'm 3 weeks out from doing Governor Pryor, but I've started the process of doing the research to gather all of that information because that's important. So it depends. And sometimes when we're doing when I'm doing the show, though, I only have a couple of days to really go in and get what I need to share with everybody. So I know who's coming up the next day, and literally, we may have a guest cancel, and all of a sudden we have another author in and they've written a book about such and such. I literally have to overnight take that book, go through it, figure out what's what, and be able to sit with an interview the next day, because that's how fast sometimes things turn around.
How do you make the guests talk about very sensitive personal stuff?
Well, I kind of start with me. I try to make sure that they are vulnerable, and that means that I'm vulnerable first. That means that I begin to share and open up and make them relax by talking about, myself, and talking about some things that we might have in common, so that they can relax in our conversation. And in relaxing in it, that helps them to see that, wow, I can trust her. I can trust her with what I need to talk about. And so that when I ask a personal question, it's not coming out of the cold. It's coming out of a warm place, because we've been talking, whether it was right before the show or during the break, I've allowed the atmosphere to be one of calm. Because if you're uptight and you're sitting there and you're quiet before the interview, that's what they're going to be. So what I try to do is I try to relax them by making small talk and allowing them to sort of, to get relaxed. And when they get relaxed, that's how I lead into the questions that are more revealing. And one of the interesting things that I do is my interview style is a little different, because I believe in it. I believe in imposing on the personal space of the person I'm interviewing. That can be a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning. So especially for my show, what we do is we turn the chairs directly toward each other, because I want to sit face to face with the person that I'm talking to, rather than side by side where I'm having to turn my head and talk to them. Face to face allows you to really get up close and personal. And when you're that up close and personal, you start to see through people. And when you start to see through people, they know that you see their heart, they know that you see who they are, and they can also see who you are. And that's uncomfortable in the beginning for people who are not used to somebody sitting close to them and looking them dead in the eye and sharing and talking. But that's the strategy that I use to kind of break the ice and let people know that, one, I'm approachable, so and I want in on your space, because the reason I brought them to the interview was because I felt they had something to offer people that could help them live their lives better. So that is what I want to pull out of them and bring out. And most times that's something intimate, something even sacred, something deep. And to get that deep, I have to allow them to just rest in it and feel okay with bringing it out. So I get in their space, I get close to them.
You start by general questions at the beginning, and then you go deep personally, like that?
Yeah, I start general if we have the time, and that's why I like long formatted interview shows, because I like to have them where they're not live, so that I can take that time to get to the place of intimacy. And if we don't have to use the information at the beginning, we don't have to. But the key is I'm taking the time to really get in there and get them to trust me throughout the process. And then they open up and they start sharing. And then when it's time to ask that sensitive question or that intimate question, I don't hesitate to ask it. You know, I ask it so that they'll realize that I really want an answer, and it's not a, you know, it's not a throw it aside question. It's an intimate question, and we need the answer, because the intention of the interview is very important. When I go in, I try to tell them what my intention is. My intention is to use your story, is to use what has happened to you, to cause others to be healed, delivered, set free, to cause others to have a better life. You know, what has happened to you, what you have gone through, people can learn from it. And if you'll be open to share it, you'll realize that whatever that was that happened to you that you're here to share about, it can really help others, and it will be worth it. It will show that what you went through was worth it and for a reason. And when they realize that's my intention, they're more open to share, because we're trying to help other people, not to embarrass them or to shame them. But, you know, no more shame. It's about helping other people so they don't have to go through the same thing.
What is your focus? Is it like politics, religion, business? Which area you like the most?
All of it. I love all of it. But, you know, I love politics. And I think, though, the key is...
Because it sells better, or because you love it more?
No, I love politics, but what I realize is that everything is spiritual, and that's the key to me, for me, and that's where my interviews always end up. Because you can sit with a politician and you can talk surface and you'll never get deep, but the only way to get deep is to go personal and to go spiritual. And when you go into that space, that's when people begin to share and open up. So it's I love politics, but I love it when I can take a politician or a political interview to a deeper place, to a deeper place, because all of us, I interviewed Neil Donald Walsh. Are you familiar with him? Conversations with God. He has a trilogy of books called Conversations with God, and he made a point that was so perfect, and I'll never forget it. He said, we don't have a political problem, we don't have an economic problem, we have a spiritual problem. And when we can get to the issues of the spirit, we can take care of everything else. So when we can get to the issues of why we treat each other the way we do, you know, the humanity of us all, when we can deal with those issues, we can stop wars, we can stop all of the political infighting, because we'll all realize that we all want the same thing. We all want what's good for humanity. We want what's good for our families. And so when we can deal at that level, that's when everything will become better. But everybody's not ready to deal on the spiritual level. But we have a spiritual problem, not an economic problem, not a political problem.
And you like more to record interviews, or you do like certain videos or like reports for the news?
I do a lot of lifestyle stuff here in Las Vegas, where there are a lot of conventions and stuff that go on here. So I might go and cover different conventions, and then I take that and I do use that on the ABC affiliate here in Las Vegas. So I do a lot of lifestyle stuff, because this is an entertainment type of city. So that's the lifestyle stuff that I do for Las Vegas. But the other interviews that I do right now, I try to stay in the area of politics and religion, because that's where I flourish, and that's where I like to be.
No gambling?
I don't gamble. And
no, I mean, you cover the gambling stuff?
No, I don't. We were producing a show on addiction. Now that's a whole different thing. If we can cover it from the addiction perspective, well then yeah, that's a story. But just to cover a story about people going out to gamble, that doesn't have any significance to me unless we can get to why they're there gambling, you know, how it's affecting their lives, how it's affecting their families. We can get to the deeper issues of what it means when they come out here and when they gamble, or what you do here in Las Vegas, because it stays here. That's more important to me than just a gambling story.
When you created like TV show for like based on interviews, usually how many staff you require for that? And do you like to shoot it with audience or without audience?
My show Nashville was with an audience, and now we're doing a live theater show that is with an audience. But I find that when I am one-on-one with somebody and there's nobody but the staff in there, I get the better interviews. I did a series in Nashville called At Home with Deborah, where we brought the guests to my home. And those were the most intimate spaces and times because they really let their guards down and they were really able to talk about things that were really intimate to them. That's more important. And sometimes when you have an audience, people play to the audience. And so you get a different feel. You always want to be up. When you have an audience, you always want to be up. You can't literally go in. And my interviews are always about going in. So when I'm able to record an interview one-on-one with somebody, when the only people in the room are the camera people and the two of us, that is more rewarding to me than doing the audience, because the audience you have to play to it and you just don't go as deep as you do.
So you feel it's less intense when you are just alone with the guest and you have just the cameraman. How many people usually use 3 cameras and a director, or how many people?
Usually if we're doing a one-on-one like that, we would have 3 cameras. But you don't have to have 3 camera people, though. That's the interesting thing about about shooting like that.
Only
you can
one.
have 2 camera operators. You got 3 cameras, 2 camera operators. You want to make sure you have somebody who's doing guest relations, who's literally just taking care of the guest, because you want the guest to feel catered to, taken care of. And it's always important that you have somebody, and that's all they do. It's not somebody who's doing something else. The moment the guest is on the way, this person is in contact with them. Well, I know them because I just got off the phone with the guest. They're on the way. When they get there, that person is meeting them at the door. That person is providing for them whatever they need, giving them what do you need, taking care of that person. So you always want to make sure you have someone doing guest relations for you. And then that kind of helps the guest to relax and feel good. So you've got you've got 2 camera people at least. You have an overall production manager who's overseeing all of the production. Your camera people could also be in charge of helping the production, setting up the lights and doing all of that, because when you're on a small shoot, you don't need that many people. 2 camera people, a production manager, and then you always want to have a producer, a producer there, and then you're the interviewer, and you've got somebody handling guest relations. So it could be a very small staff, to handle everything.
5 to 6, 4 to 6.
5 to 6 would definitely be good.
How much it costs per interview? This staff, how much it costs?
Let's see, if you break it down per interview, wow, we're probably at about $5,000 an interview. And that's not if we're taking care of the guests. Usually we don't pay guests, but there are things that you do for guests that help, that increase your budget, where you put them up and all of that stuff. If you have to put them up, if you have to get them a limo, things like that might increase your budget. But overall, you could do it, and we do it at about $5,000.
You only focus offline because it has more value, however less flexibility in terms of, let's say, contacting the guest. Have you tried doing some things online like what we are doing now?
Well, that is my next frontier. Actually, that's what I'm doing now. When I was with I Like TV, we were in millions of households, international. Say you had a potential viewership of about 40 million. That was, quite a lot. And then when I started doing local television in Nashville, you went down to 1.5 to 3 million people. That's not a lot. But what is happening with today's time is it's changing. People don't watch television the way they used to watch television. You'll have a television show like the Oprah Winfrey Show. When it was in its prime, it was only hitting a 5.6 or 6 rating, 7 max. That's only 7 million people, That's only 7 million people. If you go online now, you have people who barely know what they're doing, and they're getting 7 million viewers. So now, everything is changing. So television is not necessarily the place where it's best to be. It is about being in the space where you have international, global possibilities of being seen, and that is internet access. And that is where I'm building the local show for internet rather than television. Television becomes much more expensive than internet now, and it works. Internet works better. Everybody's watching television on watching their smartphones, and you have individuals. People are watching exactly what they want to watch. So if you can capture your audience, those people who want the content that you have, then that's how you get into the millions and millions and millions of viewers, and then that's how you can capture them and eventually start to charge them, and they'll begin to pay for it because you provided value that they can't get anywhere else. The key is the internet catching up with television in the way that it's financed, and people being able to make money on the internet. But the internet is the platform to be right now.
But don't you think like the internet usually takes time? It's not like when when you have a show on the TV, people like wait for it and watch it at certain point when it's live or at a certain time. While the internet, maybe they build the 10 million or 1 million, but with the time. So that will reduce maybe the profit that you make from the advertisers or the sponsors, because usually they need certain number of people at the same time. And this is where you can, make more money from the ads.
It's a different platform. What's happening is advertisers don't really know how to operate in the space just yet of the internet, because you have to wait, the long time for you to actually get the viewers. But you get so many more viewers, and over time it works out. So I think they're going to get it. It's just going to be a matter of how to charge for it, and having space, even like a space like YouTube that is now paying producers. That's a good space to be in as well.
How to get featured in the media? What is the strategies that you recommend for the people who wants to be featured in the media?
The strategy is to have some relevant content. What is it that you want to be featured for? And so say if you have a business, it doesn't matter what your business does, but you're not going to get a free feature by just having a business. What you need to do is you need to connect your business with what's going on, what's trending right now. Check and see what people are talking about online. Check your news channel to see what are the stories, what are they doing stories on right now. If something big happens in the news, see if you can find a way to connect to it. For example, if something happens to somebody, say a news story covers this really cute story of a child losing their cat or something, they do crazy little stories like that. Well, as a company, why don't you go into that story by doing something for that child, or by or by giving them another cat that you can get news coverage from, something to connect yourself to the story, so you can send out a press release and say that this is what we're doing, this is who we are, we're going to do this because this was tragic and we want to make this person feel better. So do it from a genuine place, but find a place for yourself within a story, with things that are happening, that are being covered in the news, because that's what the news is covering right now. That means that they already have a reporter on it. And sometimes it's really hard to take a reporter and put them on a news story that you're not covering, because you're like, okay, well, you got to pay for it. So the news director and the assignment desk is like, well, I'm going to put them on a story that we've been working on now for some days, because that story is already developing and it allows us to keep it going. For example, it depends on what happens, and this is how I've used the media to get coverage on the things that I'm working on. I was recently in Memphis, where I was using my camera to record the police arresting somebody for drugs, and when they saw me pull out my camera, it looks like a professional camera, but that didn't matter. The police officer immediately told me to put my camera up. Well, I know my First Amendment rights, so I immediately told him, sir, I'm sorry, but I have the right to record you conducting business on public property. And he didn't like that, but it's not just as a journalist that I have that right. We have that First Amendment right as citizens. So I continued to record, and it escalated to the point of where they told me that if I continued, that they were going to arrest me, and I knew that they were violating my First Amendment rights, but at that moment I didn't really want to go to jail. And so what I did was, after I left there, I started doing the research on the Memphis Police Department to see what is in their culture that they would think that it's okay to treat people the way they treated me for no reason. So in doing that research, I found that that it was a problem in that area, and not only that, the police chief had already given out a memo to the police to say they have no right to stop people from recording. So knowing that, what I did was I released a press release into the Memphis media and shared the experience. I gave them the video, and literally my story led the news for 3 days. Every station I did Skype interviews, I did all of that. I didn't have anything to sell. The whole thing was trying to get people to understand that they have First Amendment rights. But what did I do? I simply knew my rights. I presented to them a story. Here's the story. The police are at it again. We have rights, and people need to, understand their rights. And here's the video to show that they were, violating my First Amendment rights. And we stayed in the news for 3 weeks. I was invited back to Memphis to actually work with an organization that is on the ground. They're trying to get better relations with the police department. So it is about finding and realizing what's the story here. How can I put myself in the story to get the exposure and the exposure that you need.
You worked for Obama for America 2012. What did you learn from that campaign?
Well, that was an interesting thing. I worked in the media office. I did press releases. I wrote for the website. I handled the national press when Obama came to town. But it was when, we all had to get out on the street and see what running the campaign was really about. But it was on the street that I realized that, man, it was such a machine, an organized machine. I learned lessons on how to organize. They were so organized to where every neighborhood, wherever they put their precinct, that neighborhood had, of course, their area that they canvassed and that they went out for. But it was very strategic. One neighborhood did not, deal and go up on another neighborhood. And I actually knew people in certain neighborhoods, and I would say to them, I can go and I can help in that neighborhood. And they said, no, you have to stay in your neighborhood because we're counting and making sure that we can reach our goals here and let the people in that neighborhood reach that neighborhood. Everything was so organized, so I can definitely see how they were able to do how we were able to do what we did. Of course, we won Nevada, and that was the key there. And they were able to do it because of the organization, and it was very good organization.
Do you have a service that you help your clients get featured in the media?
No, I don't. Not at this time. I used to do more client work, but right now I've got quite a few projects that we're working on that don't involve the client work, but so no, I don't have a service. I'm sorry.
What are the steps that, like so many now people on the internet having their internet shows, how they can take those shows to the TV? What they should do? Or you suggest that they keep it the way it is?
Well, I do suggest that they keep it. The internet is the future of television. It's the future of television. I go to conferences, broadcasting conferences, and we used to call the internet, the computer, a second screen, but that is so changing. The computer is no longer a second screen. The computer is your first screen, and it's that individual attention. And so television is changing. The big boys are really, really scruffling to figure out how to save themselves because people are not watching that tube the way they used to. Of course, you've got televisions now with the internet on them because they're trying to keep that relevant, but that still means that they're not watching the cable and the television the way they used to. So I suggest that you stay where you are. Build your brand, build your following, build your people. Get yourself into the millions and millions of hits and likes and followers. And then if you choose to go into television, that's how you'll be able to make that transition. Because what televisions don't want to do is they don't want to make you. They're not going to make you as a brand. They're picking up people who already have followings. And that's the same way you get your book published. You have to have your own following already. So when you build that online. Get people loving what you do. They like your brand. They're there with you. They're watching you. And then you can go to a television station and you can say, listen, I have 12 million hits on my YouTube channel a month. That means something to them because that means that you can bring those people with you on a national level. So that's the key. Stay where you are, grow it where you are, because the television channels are only looking for people who are proven, who already have a message. It's hard for them to make you. They're not going to make and brand you. They're going to pick you up where you are. And they're looking for people who already have a following and who will bring that following with them.
Do you think the TV is going to be all on demand, like people just select, there is nothing like all the time broadcasting, you just select, like you select on YouTube or Vimeo?
It's probably going to go that way. I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but it's really hard. People are not sitting down at 8 o'clock to watch a show anymore. They're watching it online, and the networks though see that because they are now offering their program only to their subscribers though. Only if you have certain cable providers can you watch their content online. But they're offering it online now because they realize that people are not watching television the same way anymore, and it's an industry that's trying to save itself, and it's going to be hard to do that because things are changing rapidly.
Are you with the free model of let's say providing the content for free and then finding sponsors or to make money from advertisements, or you are with the membership like model, which is you are charging with no advertisement, charging like a monthly fee?
I am with sponsors. I would love to be on the other side, but it's hard because there's so much content out here that people can get for free. So it's hard to make them pay for your content. So because they can get it free, even everybody that you interview, they can go online, Google that person, and find a lot of free information on that person. So it's really hard to get people to pay individually for content, especially online. So now there was a transition that was made that I'm really impressed with what he did. Oh gosh, what's his name? Oh, I just forgot his name. I just had a senior moment. But he went from cable television, and now he has the Blaze. What's his name? He does the Blaze. He went from cable television to a subscription television station. He launched with millions of subscribers at $20 a month. That was major what he did. And I've been watching him and seeing how he's progressing. He literally built a full studio and everything when he was fired from one, I think it was Fox that he was with. He then went and created Blaze TV, and with Blaze TV now it's subscription, and he has his own studio, and he's making it work because what he talks about, people aren't getting anywhere else, because he's very out there, very right-wing. So people realize that he's got content that they can't get anywhere else, and they're willing to pay to listen to it. So he's creating not just his own content, he's creating other people that he also brings forward. But he managed to do it, and that was a good thing.
You authored some, like a certain number of books. Tell us more about it. And are you with self-publishing, publishing? And you are also in the process of writing 2 books. Also, tell us about it.
Yes, there's so many people who want to write, and they're like, I want to write a book, and can I find an agent, and how do I find an agent, and they've written a book and they can't find an agent, so the book is just sitting there. Times have so changed. It is amazing how times have changed. You don't need, you don't have to have an agent anymore. You don't have to have a major publisher. The key is to get your stuff out there, because the major publishers are looking for proven people. They're looking for proven work. So if you do self-publish, that means that you can now begin to sell your book, make money, and show a larger publisher, that you can do it. Of course, there's a benefit to having a larger publisher. That publisher puts some money behind your project, and when they put money behind it, that could mean the difference between a New York Times bestseller and it's sitting on your desk. So that's important, but you also have to realize what comes with a major publisher. A major publisher, all they're really doing is giving you a loan. They're giving you a loan for your book. They say, okay, we're going to take $1 million for this project. They may give you an advance of $50,000, $100,000 to get your advance. Then they spend the rest of the money on marketing and all of that, and they spend that money so that when money starts to be made from your book, the first people paid back is your publishing company. They recoup all of those benefits, so you may never see any more money because they may never make $1 million from your book. But you got your upfront advance, and that was good. So basically, it's really, it's really all your money, because the only money being made is what you're using, but they're advancing it to you. So that's good. There's value in that. And large book publishing companies also know the game of book publishing. They can get your book in major bookstores, get you great space. So there are definitely benefits
for
to
credibility,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of benefits, but if you are just sitting waiting on an agent, I suggest that you self-publish. And there are so many programs out here that will allow you to do it and do it with ease. All of my books, I call them self-published, but I own the publishing company, and we also publish additional things as well. But it started with me doing my own book. And remember, I'm in the media, so media is what I do. And I just realized that I wanted to write a book, and it wasn't necessary for me to find, to sit and wait and sit on the book and wait on a publisher to pick it up. I self-published the book, and I remember even to this day, I remember what it felt like to have the first person online buy my book, It was amazing to have that feeling. So just get out here and self-publish. My first book was called Journey to Purpose. I've republished it since then. I have a second edition of that out now. You can get it on Amazon.com. And then from there, I started, ghostwriting. I ghost wrote another book, and we also published that book. And so from there, I have 5 books that we've done, and I'm currently ghostwriting another book, and I'm still working on 2 others that are in the making. And both of them actually started out as ghostwriting projects, and but now I'm solely writing them myself.
How much you charge for ghostwriting services?
It depends upon what all I have to do. If the person comes to the table and they really are a writer, they know what they're doing, and all I'm doing is taking their information and putting it in story form and giving it, and then publishing it or giving it to them, that's a lesser price. We might be at about, $10,000, for that price. And then I also share in the copyright, because that's still my, my intellectual property. So I share in the copyright. But if the author really doesn't know how to write a book, and all they're doing is, I'm doing the interview, I'm telling, their story, they're telling me their story, and I'm weaving it, and I'm really pulling the story together, that process is up to $50,000, $60,000. It depends upon how much involvement I need to give to the project and how much that person is bringing to the table.
How do you write efficiently?
Wow. I start with research. I found that if I have enough information on a topic, then I can write. When I get writer's block, it's when I don't have enough information. It's like if I get enough information, I can write and make it flow, make it weave from one place to the other. And you just make sure that, you have your points, and then you segue them and make them weave in together. So it's actually, pretty easy for me to write. But I also know that for me to write, I have to do nothing but that. So that's why I've got books that I'm working on, because until I'm able to sit and spend the time with that project, that's the key. I have to, keep rolling, and to really write effectively and to tell the story correctly, I need to only be working on that.
How is your daily routine, like in terms of work and life, look like?
Well, because I'm single with no children, I literally work when I'm not asleep. That's all I do. And I actually love it. It's not something, it's not really work to me. It's not a job. It's my calling. It's what I feel that I'm put on this earth to do, so I do it. And I really don't find lots of pleasure, passion, excitement in doing anything else outside of the media. Right now, I am working with different companies to do and raise money for their projects the way we're raising money for the show. And so I've got one of those projects where we do morning calls. We're on the 27th day today out of 40 days, 2 calls a day, 5 a.m. and 4 p.m. So at 5 a.m. every morning, I get up at 4. I've been doing it for the last 27 days. getting on that 5 a.m. call. It's about a 35-minute call, and then on it again at 4. So I'll be doing that sort of schedule, and that means that I need to get to sleep early. Usually I'm a night person. I'm creative overnight. My days are usually spent dealing with finances, and then at night I get creative. I write, I plan, I do all of that. But every night, never fail, I make a list of the things I need to do the next day. That's the thing that I know that keeps me on track the next day is the night before. While I'm creative, while I'm thinking of all of the things that I need to do, I make that list, and the next day I don't really have to think about it. I just need to do it.
What are the habits that you're trying to develop to stay efficient?
If I could work out more, I used to be a cheerleader, a gymnast. I also taught as an instructor. And so I was used to being active because it was what I did. But now, being that I'm not doing any of those things, it's really hard for me to stay active. So I really need to be disciplined and create the habit of working out and being more active physically every day.
Who's your number one mentor?
My number one mentor is a guy that is unknown. He actually was my first investor for my show in Nashville, and since then he's a quiet soul. He doesn't say much, but every day he reminds me of what's important. You know, that the scramble that I'm in, the go, it's important for me to take care of myself, for me to relax in it, enjoy the journey. So he gives me the spiritual nuggets that help me to keep going, and so that's personal to me, and he is definitely a mentor on my everyday, on the things that I do every day. I kind of have to slow down sometimes and just listen, and it's not always pleasant to listen because he lives his life the way he's telling me to live it, and that is with no worries, no stress. You know, he literally has mastered that. And to see somebody in that much calm, I'm like, well, that's not my life. And he's saying, but it doesn't matter that it's not your life. What matters is that it matters that you calm yourself and that you are you take care of the spiritual things of life. So he's my mentor.
The investors in the media, usually like people specialized investing in the media, or the channels, or like is there a special group that invest in the media in terms of investors?
You would probably need to find somebody who knows and who's into entertainment. It's hard for the traditional investor, I have found, to understand what the media does, what it's all about, how we make money, how we can make money. It's hard for them to see that because most traditional investors are used to investing in the brick and mortar. Okay, here's a business. There's a building right there. The building has rent. Here's the business. We know that when we sell 10 cups of coffee, we know how much we make, we know our profit margin, which is quite different from media work. So it's a little bit, it's harder for them to see. So you need to find people who are open and can understand and know media, and entertainment is good. You know, those people who invest in entertainment are really good for media.
Top 3 apps that you use on your phone?
The top 3 apps on my phone. Oh gosh, I tried to remember that. What I use on my phone? Of course, you've got your Gmail. What did I do? Did I make some notes on that? Gosh, what are the apps on my phone? I don't even remember what I use on my phone every day. I don't know.
No problem.
I don't use it. I just use email. I don't use a whole lot of stuff on my phone every day.
I just like asked to see from media perspective, maybe you have your own apps that you prefer.
Let me see. What do I have on my phone? And that's interesting. As I'm looking here, I don't know. I don't know. That's interesting. That's a good question.
Top 3 favorite books.
I'll have to go with the trilogy. I talked about it earlier from Neil Donald Walsh's trilogy, Conversations with God. They changed my life, changed the way I look at everything around me, basically. So I would say those are my top 3 books: Conversations with God, 1, 2, and 3.
All right. What makes you really happy?
Doing what I do, the media work. When I start researching and really digging into something to find out what really happened, what's the truth behind it. I'm in bliss. I can do it 24 hours a day without even eating. That's what I love, and that's what I know that is a part of my DNA, what I'm here to do. So that really makes me happy. And there's literally nothing else that makes me as happy as just doing my media work, being able to do the research and to find out things and to discover things and to share those things with the world. That's what makes me happy.
Top 3 people that you're inspired by.
Oh, okay, top 3. Bill Clinton, Celine Dion, I know these are probably not typical, and Michael Jordan. Those are my top 3. Michael Jordan, because every time it matters, when he's up against the wall and has to score a point, he does it. He brings it forward. He performs every time. And that is what is so inspiring to me, to see somebody who never fails, who has so much discipline that they have worked their way to a place of perfection, that when there's 1 second left on the clock, he knows, and everybody knows, if you get Michael Jordan the ball, that he's going to hit. That's the kind of confidence that I admire, and I know he worked to get there, so that's why he inspires me.
Why Bill Clinton and not Obama?
Wow, Bill Clinton, of course I'm inspired by Obama, but Bill Clinton, because he has such stick-to-itiveness, is that a word? Okay, Bill Clinton, because, and I always look at it this way, when Bill Clinton said, I did not have sexual relations with that woman, and then the next day he had to come and face the public, you know, then he had to realize that you lied. You know, for somebody to every day, now this is why I'm inspired by him, because it doesn't matter. He stands in front of you every day. He shows up. And there are so many times when things happen to us that we're embarrassed by, that we're ashamed of, and we want to go in a closet and get in a closet and hide, you know, and never come out again. But Bill Clinton stands strong no matter what he has gone through. He continues to simply stand in himself and not be ashamed of it. That's admirable to me, and I want to grow that kind of skin. But no matter what people say about me, no matter what happens, I can stand and face everybody the next day in who I am, and that's what is impressive with me about him.
Last question, how people can contact you?
People can contact me. Let me see, what's my number? Through NC, which is my media management company, and our number is 800-949-7935. 800-949-7935.
Thank you so much, Deborah. This is, I think, the longest interview, or the second longest interview that I have ever done in the show.
Because I know, I'm so sorry. I'm pretty talkative, huh?
No,
sorry
because the information is very interesting. That's why, like, we go on like that time, that long.
Well, thank you so very much. Thank you so very much for the time, for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Be efficient and stay efficient, and see you soon with another leading expert.